There's one man more than just about anyone else who is responsible for the physical world you're living in right now. And the thing is, he started with absolutely nothing. His name was Andrew Carnegie. And by the time he was done, he had built an empire so massive, so completely woven into the very bones of our modern world that you just can't understand how our economy works without understanding what he did.
Just take a second and look around you. Right now, the frame holding up the building you're in, the car parked out on the street, that bridge you drove over this morning. Every single one of them rests on a skeleton of steel. We literally walk through a world built from this stuff every single day.
But have you ever really stopped to ask, where did all this come from? Who was the one who decided that our entire civilization would be built out of this one specific material? Who made that call? Well, the answer starts with the story of one man.
And that story begins in Scotland. See, Carnegie's family was completely upended when the Industrial Revolution made his father's job as a weaver obsolete. They had to get out, so they fled to America. At just 12 years old, Andrew Carnegie started working in a Pennsylvania cotton factory, earning $1.20 a week. But he wasn't just working, he was learning, watching.
The move that changed everything for him was getting a job as a messenger boy at the local telegraph office. Now, you have to understand what the telegraph was back in 1850. It was the internet. It was the absolute central nervous system of business. All the financial data, the breaking political news, secret military movements, it was all flying down those wires.
And this right here, this is pure Carnegie. He didn't just do the job, he weaponized it. He turned simple access into real power. He memorized every single street so he could be the fastest messenger. He learned the faces of all the powerful businessmen he delivered to, greeting them by name. But here's the crucial part. He taught himself to read the telegraph code just by listening to the clicks, so he could hear the news before anyone else even saw the message. He was turning raw information into personal leverage. So after climbing the ladder at the Pennsylvania Railroad, he makes this massive bet. He starts his own company to build bridges. And the real turning point, the moment everything changed, came with the Eads Bridge in St. Louis. I mean, this thing was a project of almost insane ambition. It was going to be the longest arch bridge in the entire world. And the craziest part? It was going to be made entirely of steel. Now, what's so fascinating is how much people doubted this. At the time, steel was a huge gamble. Everyone believed iron was the safe, reliable choice. But steel? Nah, it was too expensive, too unpredictable, and it was completely untested for a project this massive. But Carnegie supplied the steel anyway. He put his reputation, his company, everything on the line for it. When the bridge was finally finished, people were still terrified of it. They just didn't believe it was safe. So to prove a point, they did something you just wouldn't see today. They brought in a circus elephant. The thinking at the time was that an elephant, with its powerful survival instincts, would never step foot on a structure that was unstable. And as a crowd watched, the elephant calmly walked right across the bridge. And just like that, the argument was over. Steel was the future, and Carnegie was the man who had proved it.
After that huge win, Carnegie went all in on steel. But his real stroke of genius wasn't just in making steel better or cheaper, it was in how he structured his business. Today, we have a name for it: vertical integration. The concept is actually pretty simple. Carnegie decided he was not going to rely on anyone else for anything that he could possibly control himself.
So he just systematically bought up every single step of the process. He needed iron ore, so he bought the mines. He needed to get that ore to his factories, so he bought his own fleet of steamships. He needed a special type of coal called coke to fuel the furnaces, so he bought Henry Clay Frick's entire operation. He needed to deliver the final steel beams, so, you guessed it, he bought his own rail lines. From the second that ore came out of the ground to the moment that finished beam landed at a construction site, Carnegie owned it all. And the result of all this control? Well, the numbers are just mind-blowing. By 1890, his personal income for that year alone was over $25 million. Now, in today's money, that is more than $850 million in a single year. But there's another side to this story, a much darker one. See, Carnegie had spent years building up this public image as a friend of the working man, often writing about the dignity of labor. That promise? It would collide head-on with a brutal reality in the summer of 1892 at his own Homestead Steel Works. It all started with a labor dispute over a new contract. His manager, a man named Henry Frick, wasn't there to negotiate. He was there to break the union. He slashed wages and then locked the workers out of the very plant they worked in. When the workers stood their ground, Frick hired a private army, 300 armed Pinkerton agents, to seize the plant by force. A bloody, day-long battle followed.
When the smoke cleared, 10 people were dead. The Union was completely crushed. And Andrew Carnegie? He was thousands of miles away on vacation in a Scottish castle and said almost nothing.
And this is the real puzzle of Andrew Carnegie. How do you square that man, the ruthless businessman of Homestead, with the man who wrote this? In an essay he called The Gospel of Wealth, he argued that it was a moral duty for the rich to accumulate vast fortunes, not to keep, but to give away for the public good. He famously wrote, "The man who dies thus rich dies disgraced."
And you know what? He really meant it. Over the course of his life, Carnegie gave away what would be over $6 billion today. He paid for the construction of more than 2,500 public libraries all across the world. I mean, think about that for a second. Thousands of libraries, still standing, still being used right now, all built with the profits from an empire forged in brutal conflict.
So, by the end of the 1890s, Carnegie's ready to move on. He wants to dedicate all of his time to giving his money away. At the exact same time, you have the most powerful banker in the world, J.P. Morgan, who has this grand vision to combine the entire American steel industry into one single massive company. And to do it, there was one company he had to have, Carnegie Steel.
The negotiation itself is the stuff of legend. Carnegie didn't haggle, he didn't debate, he just wrote down a single number on a small slip of paper and had it sent to Morgan. That number was $480 million. That's about $17 billion in today's money. When Morgan saw the price, he reportedly just said, "I accept this price." No hesitation. And with that, U.S. Steel was born, the very first billion-dollar corporation in history.
So why does all of this matter now? Because the playbook Carnegie wrote, it's still the Bible for today's biggest companies. Let's start with vertical integration. Carnegie owned the mines, the ships, the railroads, the mills. Now look at Apple. They design their own computer chips, their own software, and they control their own app store. They own every critical piece of the process. It's the same exact strategy.
Or how about Tesla? Elon Musk knew that the single biggest bottleneck for making electric cars was the battery supply. So what did he do? He built the Gigafactory to control battery production himself. It's the same logic Carnegie used when he bought up all the coke and iron ore supplies 100 years ago. Control the bottleneck. And remember that kid in the telegraph office? The one who used his special access to information to map out the entire business world? Well, today, Google is doing the exact same thing, but on a global scale. It uses our search data to create a real-time map of human desire and intention. The technology changes. The core idea? It doesn't. Proximity to information is where the real power is.
Carnegie's empire gave us the skeleton of the modern industrial world. The empires being built today are giving us the architecture of our digital lives, the very structure of how we think. And that leaves one question for all of us, the one really worth thinking about. What are you building?